Well, welcome everyone tonight to a chat with Dr. Susan Davis, who is the curator, one of the curators of Wildflower Women #3, that's currently on show at the Gympie Regional Gallery. And my name's Sandra Ross, and tonight Sue and I are going to have a chat because Nina, who is the other co-curator, is not feeling well, so unfortunately is not here with us tonight. So the idea of tonight is that we're going to learn a little more about the role of the curator. We're also going to learn a little more about the past #1 and 2 Wildflower Women exhibitions that have been in Caloundra and um, at Noosa Regional Gallery. So, it'll be interesting to learn how a project like this evolves and grows into something beyond an idea. But before we launch into it and I ask you some questions, Sue, I'd like to acknowledge the Cubby Cubby and Gubby Gubby peoples of the land where I'm sitting right now and where the gallery sits. They're the traditional custodians of the land. And I would like to acknowledge too the traditional custodians of the lands that you might be sitting on right now, where you are. And pay my respects to our neighbours who are the Waka Waka people and the Butchulla people, and thank all of their ancestors for their wisdom into our futures and guiding us as we walked on country zoo together with Nene. So I've got a few queries. All righty.
Okay, take it away, Sandra.
All right, so Sue, can you give us a little background into this project, into the Wildflower 1 and 2 and how they came about?
Yeah, sure. So Wildflower Women 1 started off in 2015 and 2016. So Nina at the time was the director at the Noosa Regional Gallery, and I was at Seeker University at Noosa, and I'd been involved in Noosa Biosphere Limited, and I'd been chair for a number of years. And at one of the floating lands, there was an evening of Judith Wright's poetry up at Boreen Point, and that's when I found out that she had a holiday house there and lived there on occasionally in the late 50s, early 60s. And at an event, they were talking about celebrating 100 years since her birth in 2015. And in that year, I was talking to, I think it was Moira McLaughlin, and she said, I think it was also 100 years since her friend Kathleen MacArthur was born as well. And I went, have I heard of that name? And she said, well, yeah, she was really involved in the campaigning and that with Judith Wright, and she lived down at Caloundra, and she was also an artist and writer. And not long after that, I walked into Berkelow's bookshop. I live at Yamundi, in the second-hand section where I always look, and there was a whole section of Kathleen MacArthur's books. And reading one of those called Living on the Coast, there's a chapter there on Kalula, and it's about the Kalula campaign. And it starts off with her saying, in 1953, in the company of Judith Wright and Meredith McKinney, we, went on this walk up Mount Timbiwa, and looking north said this would make a great national park. And being in the Noosa area, I'd heard previously when people talked about Kalula National Park, now part of Great Sandy, they always talked about Arthur Harold and the Kalula Committee and Noosa Parks Association. And of course, they were involved and very much involved in this, I guess, the second phase of the campaign. But the fact that Judith and Kathleen had started it was a story that I'd not heard. And then when I researched it further, so I'd been researching another playwright at the Fryer Library, University of Queensland. And when I was looking through just lists of, collections they had there one day, I saw Kathleen MacArthur. And so I asked if I could get those boxes out. And it turned out she'd been, when she was alive, sending them copies of all her prints and postcards as they were being produced, and even having quite a lively correspondence with the librarian, getting them to help do her research at times. So then in talking to Nina one day, she mentioned a friend of hers who had a collection of Kathleen's work, who'd suggested to her that it might be timely to have an exhibition. And then I was saying, yeah, I think that's a really great idea. And then it became this thing about, we'd missed the 100 years since Kathleen had been born, but we thought, let's go for 101, Judith and Kathleen, and let's pull together what we can of Kathleen's work to have a small exhibition at Noosa Regional Gallery. But part of that was also profiling some of the ephemera about the Cooloola campaign. As part of that, because that Timbiwa story was really quite significant, and I'd met Ulrika, she was doing her PhD with us at CQU, and I knew about her really interesting vinyl work. We got her to do one vinyl work of the Timbiwa moment. So that was the first exhibition at the end of 2016, and it was on with two other exhibitions that were also about the environment and flowers, and so it was, yeah, it was a really nice sort of programming selection, and that was the first one.
So that was the first one that was mainly about the two women, wasn't it? And the research that you did to bring that to light, the work that those two women did. Yeah, and then you took that exhibition to Caloundra. Now it took a little different kind of slant there, didn't it? And it's interesting how things change. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, Sue.
I'll just see whether it'll let me share screen. I'll just pause.
When restrictions are, I don't want to expend too much energy in angry, but I just think that these that can be done.
Oh, the sound's gone strange.
Oh, that was strange.
And more and more courts were already
okay. That was the flyer for the first one, and that features Kathleen's Vanilla Lilies. So for the second one, we started talking to Hamish Sawyer, who was then the curator at Caloundra Regional Gallery, and he was interested. The other thing was about Kathleen and Caloundra. That's where she lived for 50 years, but she also was involved in initiatives to get Pumicestone Passage on the National Heritage Register and protect that. Anyway, so he started talking to us and said it would be interesting to have some contemporary artists. And so that's when we put on our thinking caps about a range of artists who worked in different media, but had worked with some sort of aspect of the environment or flowers in different ways. And so the four artists we ended up with were Marvine Ash, who's a painter, Ulrika, who's a printmaker and does the vinyl wall artworks, Shannon Garson, who's a ceramic artist, and Anne Harris, who works with textiles and plants. That was going to talk about, we'll talk about that later. So as you can see there, we got Ulrika to do a vinyl work there of Kathleen wildflowering. We used some of the same artworks of Kathleen's from her son, Hugh MacArthur, from the Fry collection, but then the focus was very much on contemporary approaches to the Wallam, to the women's stories, and their own experiences of the Wallam, the wildflowers and the environment. And then at that exhibition, Julie Gibbs came along and she said, oh, Cooloola campaign, do you think it would be, we should have an exhibition at Gympie? And that's when we started talking and said, that sounds like a great idea, but it's not just the same exhibition moving there, it's a new one. And so we also then started talking to Julie about some Gympie and Cooloola artists to involve and to start the process all over again, really.
Yeah, so idea of a curator. Like, what does a curator do, Sue? What is their role in all of this? What did you and Nina have to do, and how did you divide up your tasks and work it all out? Yeah.
So I guess a curator is I think the actual definition is about the caretaker. So it's about people who are really having oversight of the concept for the exhibition, for the management, for the selection, and then the actual putting together the final selection of the works, and really how they're going to be arranged and interpreted. So often there's research involved as well, lots of lists, lots of collecting bits and pieces from the artists, setting deadlines, and then actually working on the design of the exhibition and the layout, and overseeing the hang or the install. And it's really about, I guess, having that eye for the audience. So it's sort of stepping outside of the artist's position and looking at what's the experience going to be like for the audience.
Yes, because the experience of going to the Wild Women. You want
to be a wild woman, I know.
Wildflower Women. The experience of the first exhibition would have been quite different to the second one, with that more contemporary approach, and then the third one that had a more collaborative kind of women's circle type approach. Can you talk a little bit about that and how the women got together and worked together? And it was lovely, actually. So talk a bit about that.
So with the second exhibition, we had a couple of meetings with the artists, and one afternoon we did go for a walk in Kathleen MacArthur Reserve, and that was a really lovely experience, and we wanted to keep getting back there, but we never did. So that's why for this one, and because personally I didn't really know the Cooloola area at all, that's when we went, well, how do we kickstart this? Let's try and bring the artists together, spend time on country, have a look and see what wildflowers are there, what's the environment like, and then also getting to know the artists and how they work in the concept development. So I think what's been really lovely, like, the Gympie artists all knew each other, some of the Sunshine Coast artists knew each other, but everyone didn't know everyone else, and finding all these crossovers and synergies, people who are working with natural inks and dyes, people working with fibres. So I think we've all learnt from each other, which has been really lovely.
Yes, and for people out there that might not know, there's a whole lot of public programs attached to this exhibition. Today we had Julie Gibbs, who's here tonight, in the gallery, showing some of the techniques that she uses to make that amazing work, that 4-metre work that she's done. And we have some public programs that take you out on country, one on the weekend with Mel Stannard. And, there's the whole lot. So you can jump onto the gallery website and have a look at whether you want to be involved or not, because it's really lovely to participate in these sorts of things. So, Sue, I'd like you to kind of talk about this. It's a sort of subtle activism that's going on here, and I think the message of that is really important for people to know a little more about this subtle activism.
Well, I think, and I mean, people have argued about it for centuries about, what's the role and purpose of art. And there are some people who will say that it's art's for art's sake, and, they can't stand art with a message. But I think, underlying Kathleen's paintings while she, did these beautiful works was actually it was always about an educational purpose. She wanted people to be able to know, recognise, love and care about the Queensland wildflowers, and in particular the Wallam, where a lot of these coastal wildflowers grow, because most of these areas have been cleared for development. So I think she certainly was more hardcore activist as well, but even her art had that gentle activist sort of purpose behind it. So I guess for our artists, it ranges from people who have been, serious activists and identify as such as Zila and Julie. The Sisters of Mary, I was hoping we might get a little bit of a return or a showing from them. It's in their green habits that they made, that they appeared during the campaign to stop Traviston Dam going ahead. And Marie Edmondson Pryor, of course, Marie was very much an artist activist as well. So we range from people who have, quite consciously worked with their art with an activist stance, through to people like Judy Bates who go, I'm not interested in that at all, but she is still very much interested in people knowing and appreciating what's there. But she's one, for example, who couldn't care less about the botanical names and knowing all the names of the flowers. She knows she loves them, and she just would like other people to love them as well, and keep an eye out for them.
Yes, so, maybe we could talk a little bit about each, I don't know, Sue, do you feel like talking a little bit about each artist and just what they're presenting, so that people who haven't been to the exhibition might get a little idea?
I can do that. I've got a few little slides, perhaps. So I just thought I'd mention, some things about the different ways you work as a curator and all the planning that goes on behind the scenes. And so one of the things early on was, getting the floor plan of the gallery, working out sort of what wall space we had, what the potential was. And then as we got the list of works from the artists, and also we had a sharing day, was it in November, I think, last year? And then we had a Zoom meeting earlier this year. So as we started to see the work, we could start to cluster and group them. And then I just wanted to note, this was an early, just an initial layout, but that's when we go back to the space and actually stand in it and start to sort of imagine how it might look. And I know, of course, you can do all this in probably software and programs now and see it, but we're also, in the spaces, it makes a big difference. And that's, for example, where we saw originally we were thinking of using the 3 movable walls, and we went, no, that's not going to work. It's going to be too closed in. And we wouldn't get a nice view of, for instance, of Julie's work. So then we did so then we ended up with a completely different design and layout. But I was also just going to share that that's the sort of thing we did for the other exhibition as well. And also I just using PowerPoint, actually trying to mock up what each wall would look like. I was hoping to do that this time, but there were still some people, even till quite close to the exhibition, we didn't have images of all their work for. And that was where what was really lovely with that exhibition is things that you start to get excited about, these vistas, as well as, specific individual works. So Ulrika was doing this wonderful large vinyl work of Pumice Passage. And for that one, Anne Harris, she did some wall works, but she made these 3 dresses that related to Kathleen and Judith's story, and using natural dyes as well. And so that was Marvine's paintings. But then actually when you get to see things, you can have the plans, but then you get into the space and, that's when it might adapt. So that was Anne's dresses looking that way. But then there was also this lovely view across with Pumice Passage behind them. So we ended up then with this idea of entering through the de Ritz space, and that idea of the landscape, and starting with Nicole's work, where she was looking at the boundaries and markers and watersheds, with Nene being Indigenous and from the region, and Melissa being Indigenous, them looking at the Indigenous and colonial history and mapping. There's mapping in Mel's work, and then also looking at things like the colours and the interplay of the colours between that sort of turquoise blue almost in some of Nicole's, with those rich reds in Nene's and Mel's, and then through to Julie's, which really takes you then into the landscape, into the Wallam. And then you've got the detail in Mel's jewellery through, and then Ulrika, we ended up with 2 of Ulrika's wall works. I actually asked her to do 2 extra ones, actually, an extra flower one and the women walking. And we ended up with having her Banksia next to Julie's. So you've got the Wallam Banksia, which is really significant conceptually for the Wallam, because that's what the whole area is named after, being in Julie's work and then in Ulrika's work. And so you're going from the external then internally. Oh, whoops, no, we'll just, sorry about that. I put the wrong video in. So this was just a little snippet then video. Oops, can we turn the sound down on that? Of Mel's work, and you can see the Indigenous mapping ideas, the ochres that she's collected on country and from her own country, through to Julie's work, and going right into the detail. And there's the beautiful Wallam Banksia and the bark, through the Boronia, the grass trees, the coral ferns, hakeas, and then around to Ulrika's Banksia. Then in the next room, we've got Marie Pryor's work to begin with. And Marie did a lot of work. I guess some of the materials she particularly liked, and media she liked to work with, was gouache and also pastel on this beautiful black paper. So these were some works that had not been exhibited before, and her husband didn't even know they were there, found them in a drawer. And then there was another set of works we found, charcoal works that had not been exhibited either, which was really about that concerns about the human interface with the environment. Oh, we'll turn that sound down. And that's where it was really lovely that Barb had actually, we thought these works would go well with Marie's, because they are actually waste that she's collected, but then also still that connection to nature. And of course to Sandra Ross's beautiful work, which takes us into the forest and the Wallam, and the lovely interplay of colours, and then going into the detail with Anne Harris's, and that's actual dried flowers. That's the beautiful, she calls this, was it it's not a mandala, was it a message? No, memory code, her memory code. And then these works, so the wall works that she did, they're actually the plants she was researching during her residency, and her investigating all the different ways to get the colour out of them, trying out a whole lot of test runs. But then with these, it's a form of silk, the material she's used, where she's actually wrapped the flowers materials in that and steamed it, I think, for about 5 hours. And she was, yeah, so she did a lot of test runs to be able to get that lovely outcome. And then, so those are the ones I talked about, and getting those nice vistas through. I was so happy about that, getting that view through the outdoors, and then starting to move into the interiors. Oh, where's the one of Ziela's work? Is it in the wrong order? There it is. And what I thought was really interesting with Ziela's, it almost reminds you of forests as well, but then this idea of being embodied in the Wallam. And then through to the works that really about the Wallam on the interior and on the domestic, and revisiting things like tea sets and doilies, and with Megan's work with embroidery, and then finishing up with Kathleen MacArthur's work, and in particular this selection of works that are of flowers that you can find in the Kalula region.
So Sue, do you think
I just
might be a
sorry about Judy's work there, Judy Barrass's work, and why one of the reasons we invited Judy to be involved is because she also, I mean, her work is always innovative and playful, but also the digital element, and the fact she's got 2 digital works, one a projection and one a little animation.
Yes, that large projection in the stairwell is very mesmerising. I must admit, I get sucked into it every time I walk through there. Yeah.
And that was
So,
the idea too, when we, you know, checking out the space and going, oh, we'd really like this wonderful stairwell in this gorgeous old building. How can we bring it to life? And so that was when I asked Ulrika if she could do an extra vinyl work, if we could put some vinyl on the at the midway up the stairs, and then Judy's projection at the top. So that's come together really well.
Yes, it's really contemporized that old stairwell actually when you walk up.
Excellent.
So out there, if you haven't seen this exhibition, it is on until the 28th of November. So make sure you come and immerse yourself in it. But before we open for the chat, Sue, do you think after all of this, I mean, the exhibition in Gympie has 9 artists, and I'm sure at times you must have found it incredibly frustrating and like herding cats, like that whole story. But do you think, is there a moment of wow, awesomeness that things came together beautifully that you had no idea would happen? Is there any moment like that?
No idea what happened. Oh, I guess, well, we didn't know what we were getting from Nene. So she was so busy with their own exhibition downstairs. And so, but it's it's a Bush Foods one, but even the colours in it then really resonated with the other works in that room. So, and then with Mel's work, when she brought in, the orange fungi and some of the other detritus in there, like just the way the colours were sort of playing off each other, so that was really lovely. I think the interplay with your work and Anne's, we were really excited when they were both hung, and that was lovely. So some of those things were unexpected, but
it's interesting how the work talks to the space, the gallery space, and it also talks to each other. And you can predict how it's going to work as a curator.
Well, I think Barb's work is an example of that. So for her, she really wanted on that long wall the set of prints, which go across times of the day. So it's the same print at different times of the day. But then we had never seen the final version of the book she'd made. So she had the lino prints of flowers as dress pattern, but then in the artist book, she's actually got these little cutouts of the dress with it in there and the sample of the fabric. And that's the sort of thing you see it on a little photo and you're not quite sure it is. And then we got it out and we went, oh, wow. And then because those works were framed and the others weren't, it was a much stronger story. And that's when we went, oh, this is really interesting. And it's that contemporizing, the heritage and a fresh look at it. But it also visually, it was strong. So that was one, I think, where it wasn't how she'd envisaged it. And we had to convince her it was the right way to hang it.
Yeah, interesting. And that's your role. In the end, it's up to the curator. Yes.
Yeah, it's a curator. And that's where you're thinking about what's going to be interesting for, a viewer. Yeah.
Exactly. For that experience of walking through the show, it's very important.
Surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. So should we open up now to some other questions that people might have? Is there anyone out there? No one's written anything on the chat, I've noticed. I hope you can hear me now out there a bit better. Is there anyone that wants to ask Sue about curating?
And of course, I am not a trained curator. Nina's the very experienced curator. My background actually was in drama and theatre. So I guess there's aspects that I really identified with in terms of, we talk about directing or producing or scenography or the dramaturg, where you're actually really also thinking about the experience of the audience. Yes, but I think that's where you know, Nina and I work well together because to begin with, I said, I'll do all the research and, you know, and do a lot of the organising and the writing. And she's certainly, in terms of then all the stuff about how works, you know, are going to be hung and framed and all of that stuff, is her expertise is fabulous.
Do you think there might be a possibility of a Wildflower Women 4 in the future?
Well, there might be.
On the horizon.
It could be, yeah.
Had a holiday and a break from it all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's that?
Just here, there's a few comments from people. You know, Susan, this looks amazing. I look forward to the gallery. No questions, but want to say thank you for bringing the exhibition together. I absolutely love it. I had so many good comments about the whole exhibition today while doing my AIR. That's Julie. It was heartwarming to hear. And thanks, Sue, for the insight. Question: what learnings will you take from this show into Flower Woman 4? There you go. What would you do differently, maybe, or next time?
What would I do differently? I guess the point with and why we haven't just sort of bundled up a show to tour, it's actually about connecting with place and with the country and with the community and finding the stories from the community. And so, you know, while I didn't know Cooloola very well, I mean, I'm sort of the region next door, and I did know Marie prior, and Marie actually, so with the 2016 exhibition, we also had a symposium where people did presentations, and so Marie was actually one of the presenters and presented about her arts projects, arts activism. In particular, one she talked about at the time was one where she was wanting to raise awareness about all the four-wheel drives driving up the beaches and how they damage the crustaceans and small creatures. So she'd put these the shapes of all of those onto a stencil, but then it ended up looking like car track tire tracks on the sand. And I think she did that in a couple of locations. It was quite controversial. So, but yeah, I knew about Marie. So I guess the point is, if we went to a new location, you know, who are the women, the stories. So often when you dig a little bit, you'll find that in terms of people who've campaigned to help get these reserves and national parks established, there's often these women who are largely unheralded and unacknowledged or under-acknowledged. So I guess it's about linking to those stories of place wherever the show might go, and those artists too. And I just, yeah, it's been fabulous. There's all these talented, you know, very skillful women artists in the regions, and it's great to be able to profile you women and your work.
Yes, I think I can't remember the year you said, but there was a man who acknowledged that, you know, it was men that got that park, got Cooloola National Park listed, but really she did it way before. Yeah,
well, they started it, you know, and what they were really good at was actually marrying art and science and the partnerships. So the fact that for the Cooloola campaign, Judith and Kathleen worked with all the leading ecologists at University of Queensland at the time, so they knew how to I guess, to network, to collaborate, and to get their message out there. But the funny thing is then the guys took over, but it's the guys' story who everyone knows. Their contribution somehow or other disappeared. But yeah, it's back now.
It's those untold stories that need to be told. Someone says here, congratulations to Wildflower Women Involved. I went to the exhibition on Saturday, but I know it'll be there and again, she'll go out before November. She was very taken with the presentation that Annie offered. Was that your idea, Sue, with the drama background? She said it was very moving. So Was that your idea, Sue, or
No,
was
no,
that Annie?
she's been wanting to extend herself and try different things. And so when she had her residency down at the Botanical Gardens, anyone who went to see that in the last week, she had on the floor there a bigger arrangement like that. And that's when Nina actually started talking about, oh, I wonder if we could ask her to do something like that at the gallery. And then she said, oh, could I do it as a performance piece? And this idea of the memory code. So as she's laying things down, she's telling you the story of what it means to her. And it was really great that we went, yeah, sure, why not? So
it was very beautiful. Yeah, I think we were talking of putting that up as for people to watch. When they visit the show. So yeah, we'll work on that.
And she speaks so well.
She did, didn't she? Yes, it was. Yeah, very moving and heartfelt. Very. Yeah, hit you right here. Yes, it's beautiful. So, are the works for sale? Someone's asked.
Some are, yes, some are. We do have a list of works. I think the gallery staff were really flat out last week, and maybe the list wasn't available on Saturday, but there is a list. Not all of them are for sale, but a lot of them are. And then I'm sure the artists would be open to versions of such, if not the whole work. I mean, Julie's work of 4 meters is, she's going to do cards though, so you can buy them next week. Is it, Julie? Yeah. Oh, they're here. Oh, hooray. Yes. So I'm sure people can be commissioned. Zila did a large body of work. So she made wraps and shawls for all of the artists and people associated. And that's when we couldn't actually include all of them in the exhibition. So some of them are going to be made available for sale through the shop as well. But the works in the exhibition for sale as well, if people are interested.
The gallery has a lovely shop, and I know some of the artists do have some little versions and cards and little artist books, excuse me, and things that are for sale in there. So make sure you check that out when you pop in.
Yes.
And while you're there, to Nene, who we mentioned, Nene Bird and her family have an exhibition. Auntie Nene is a bachelor elder, and her family clan name is Watamata. So it's Watamata Bara meaning family. And her exhibition complements Wildflower Women absolutely beautifully. So the gallery is just this lovely, nurturing, gorgeous place at the moment. So yes, make sure you pop in and have a look at that as well.
The total embodiment of all of those pillars from the new state government arts roadmap, and that, local storytelling and strengthening communities, all of those things. It's a perfect example. So very proud.
Someone else is asking or saying, or someone's looking forward to the paper tea set demo with Judy Bates on the 29th of October. That's a live streamed demo. I'm looking forward to that too. I keep looking at them thinking, how has she made those? And someone else says here, the image you used for the flyers would look good on a white t-shirt or clothing. Whoa, there you are, Julie. There's a whole blue gum, what's it called? Blue thumb story that could happen. Have you got t-shirts already?
No, that's her
yes,
card.
a lovely scarf or a bag. So
scarf would be nice. Yeah, I always love a good scarf.
Yes, you do, Sue, and a good hat.
Oh yes, we love a good hat. No, it's hard to go past my Shaz's hat, my 50s style Shaz's hat, and it twists down so you can take it anywhere. Yeah.
So someone says, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to visit. That was Charlotte to everyone.
Yay, good on you, Charlotte. Edith snuck in on the weekend in the last half an hour. And Edith came up to our wildflowering weekend at Cooloola. So that was lovely for her to have met some of you and then seen some of your work there and see it now on show. There she is. And she does wonderful wildflower art herself. I can't wait to see what you do with the Cooloola wax flower, Edith.
Oh, there's Edith. Yes, I saw you arrive. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, I guess there's always an end to these things, and
That's
maybe
right.
we've come to it.
Yeah.
And thank you, Sue, for giving us some background and insights into the exhibition. I think it's always interesting to learn where these things come from and how they evolve and grow, and that this is a perfect example of that.
Certainly is.
So,
yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Julie, for the initial suggestion, and thank you, Sandra, and for hosting tonight. It's been fantastic. Thanks everyone for joining us too.
Yay, give us a clap.